The early summer sunlight gently illuminated the historic brownstone mansion in Boston's Back Bay district. In the master bedroom on the second floor of the three-story building, Liz Wilson Collins awoke to the sound of a baby crying. The clock showed 6 a.m. A fresh breeze from the Charles River quietly stirred the lace curtains. "Grace, Mama's coming." As she rose from her pillow, Liz glanced at her husband Michael sleeping beside her. Careful not to wake him after his late night at the investment bank, she gently pulled back the covers. While slipping into her silk pajamas, she still felt a twinge of guilt about their cost. From downstairs, Chopin's waltz melted into the morning silence. Emily, her 12-year-old daughter, had begun her usual early morning piano practice. Though on the autism spectrum, Emily possessed remarkable musical talent. Her clear tones brought an unexpected warmth to this grand mansion. As she approached the crib, Liz pondered her sense of displacement in this life. Growing up in a modest teacher's family in Louisville, Kentucky, this luxurious lifestyle felt like a dream. As the eldest of 4 siblings, she had always witnessed her parents' dedication to education and frugal living. Her father Tom was a proud educator who taught at public high school for 40 years. His words, "Knowledge is the greatest asset," still served as Liz's anchor. Her mother Sarah raised 4 children with homemade meals and abundant love. The weekend family dinners around the table remained etched in Liz's heart as her foundational memory. "Good morning, my angel." As she lifted Grace, Liz felt the weight of this precious life, conceived through IVF at age 45. After years of fertility treatments, this baby was a long-awaited blessing from her marriage to Michael. Every time those tiny hands reached for the sky, her heart overflowed with gratitude for this miracle. Through the window, the old oak tree in the backyard swayed in the morning breeze. Last week, her mother-in-law Peggy had instructed the gardener to cut it down, saying it looked unsightly, but Liz had objected. She felt a special attachment to this tree. The memories of Emily playing on the swing attached to its branches were just one reason she couldn't bear to see it go. "Liz, are you ready for today's party?" Peggy's voice coming up the stairs made Liz tense momentarily. Her mother-in-law, a former Harvard psychology professor, was a known perfectionist in Boston's high society. Her footsteps always carried an intimidating resonance. "Yes, I've confirmed everything with Mary." "Good. This is my granddaughter's 3-month debut. There's no room for mistakes. I've personally selected all the guests." Peggy's words carried their usual authoritative tone. Her cold attitude toward Liz hadn't changed since the wedding. Liz could still remember her first words, "You trapped my son into marrying above your station." Liz had met Michael at the library. While working as a librarian and raising Emily alone, she unexpectedly reunited with her college classmate. Despite his success in investment banking and established position in Boston's upper society, he approached her with unchanged kindness. Her divorce from her first husband had come after disagreements about Emily's therapy approach. The gulf between her husband's insistence on normal education over music and Liz's desire to nurture her daughter's talent had grown unbridgeable. Now, however, Emily's piano playing served as a bridge connecting their families' hearts. Emily's piano playing paused briefly before beginning a new piece. Another Chopin waltz. Liz sighed deeply, finding solace in those notes. On the third floor was Peggy's dedicated weekend suite. Its presence constantly weighed on Liz's shoulders. Mary, the housekeeper who had served the Peggy family for over 20 years, was one of the few who showed understanding toward Liz. Sometimes she would share photographs of Peggy's younger days. However, Peggy's mood would always darken when such topics arose. Liz still didn't know why. Holding Grace, Liz gazed at the oak tree illuminated by the morning sun through the window. Like that tree, she quietly renewed her determination to stand firm with deep roots. At 8 a.m., the mansion's kitchen was enveloped in the bustle of breakfast preparations. The fragrant aroma of Mary's pancakes wafted through the room. "Mary, did you confirm the catering for the party?" Peggy's sharp voice rang out as Liz entered the kitchen with the baby. "Yes, ma'am. Everything's arranged with the New England Culinary Association. You reminded them about the temperature of the lobster bisque?" "Yes, I spoke directly with Chef Johnson." Liz silently brewed her coffee, remembering last night's incident. Her suggestion to serve her mother Sarah's pride and joy, Kentucky Fried Chicken, had been summarily dismissed. "Really, Liz? You intended to serve something akin to fast food at a Boston society party?" Peggy's contemptuous smile from that moment still stung. Emily entered the kitchen, having finished her piano practice and changed into her uniform. The navy blazer of Boston Latin School suited her delicate demeanor perfectly. "Emily, stand up straight. A lady doesn't walk with such posture." Peggy's criticism made Emily's shoulders stiffen momentarily. "Good morning, Emily. Your Chopin was beautiful today." Liz's voice offered gentle support. Emily gave a small smile and reached for a pancake. "Oh, Emily. Mind the carbohydrates before the party." Peggy's voice rang out again. Liz started to speak but swallowed her words as Michael entered the kitchen. "Good morning, everyone." Michael's cheerful voice momentarily lightened the atmosphere. However, Liz didn't miss the fatigue in his eyes. Another late-night conference call about investment projects had kept him up. "Michael, you'll definitely be home early today, won't you?" A subtle command underlaid Peggy's voice. "Of course, Mother. It's my daughter's special day." Michael kissed Grace's cheek. The baby laughed delightedly. "Indeed. This is the debut of the Collins family heir." Liz felt a slight discomfort at Peggy's words. At 9 a.m., party preparations began in earnest. Gardeners tended to the roses, catering staff arranged table settings. A string quartet from the Boston Symphony Orchestra would be set up in the living room. "Liz, you're not planning to wear that dress, are you?" Peggy, descending the stairs, surveyed Liz's outfit from top to bottom. "This is Chanel. Michael gave it to me for my birthday. Last year's collection, isn't it? Many of our guests are from the fashion world. It makes a poor impression. Liz bit her lips silently. In truth, when buying this dress, she had been startled by its price tag, equivalent to a year's salary at the library. Still, she had accepted it, considering Michael's feelings. There's this season's dress in the third-floor closet. Wear that, Peggy commanded before disappearing into the living room. At that moment, Emily's piano began to play again. The delicate notes seemed to wash away the heavy atmosphere like gentle rain. Holding Grace close, Liz looked out the window. The oak tree in the backyard swayed gently in the morning light, as if sensing something to come. In the master bedroom closet lay a handmade quilt sent from Liz's family home. She had planned to use it for Grace's debut. Her mother Sarah had stitched it with love, each stitch carrying her affection. However, seeing Peggy's current attitude, it was clear this too would be rejected. No doubt Peggy had already envisioned Grace wrapped in an expensive cashmere blanket. Emily's playing grew stronger. Wrapped in these unchanging notes of love, Liz sighed deeply. She intuitively felt that today would mark some kind of turning point. At 10 a.m., the Boston sky was crystalline blue, as if specially arranged for this day. A pleasant early summer morning at 72 degrees. A gentle breeze from the Charles River tapped softly at the mansion's windows. Liz was in the second-floor bedroom, covering Grace with Sarah's handmade quilt. The pastel patchwork radiated love in every stitch. The baby breathed peacefully, wrapped in the familiar soft fabric. "Goodness! What are you doing?" Peggy's voice rang out as the door suddenly opened. "You're planning to use something so rustic. Change it to the Hermes cashmere blanket immediately." Liz answered quietly but firmly. "This is from my mother, who stitched each piece for her granddaughter. The Boston Globe Society columnist is coming today. This affects the Collins family's dignity." Peggy pulled out an expensive blanket from the closet, carelessly setting aside the handmade quilt. From downstairs came Emily's piano, Chopin's Minute Waltz. She was doing a final check of her performance piece for the party. The pure notes slightly softened the heavy atmosphere. "Young miss, your playing is wonderful." Mary quietly spoke to Emily as she set down a glass of lemonade in the music room. "Madam used to play piano in her youth." Her words were cut short by Peggy's sharp glance as she descended the stairs. At 11 a.m., the first guests began arriving. Museum trustees, Harvard professors, investment bank executives. Women in the latest designer dresses, men in perfectly tailored suits. Then Liz's parents arrived. Tom in his modest navy suit and Sarah in her handmade dress, carrying a package of lovingly made buttermilk biscuits. Peggy's expression tightened momentarily before forcing a smile. "My, you've come so far. But bringing food. This is our family tradition." Liz's voice rose unexpectedly. But at that moment, Michael's phone rang, an emergency work call that required his immediate attention. In the music room, Emily was about to begin her performance. As the invited guests watched the autistic girl with mixed curiosity and sympathy, pure notes began filling the room. The minute waltz took on a fresh, life-affirming quality through Emily's sensitive interpretation, enveloping the venue. Gradually, the audience's expressions changed. Surprise and emotion began seeping through the masks of high society. After the performance, a deep silence was followed by thunderous applause. Remarkable talent. A natural musician. Hard to believe she's autistic. Then Tom quietly spoke. Education isn't determined by family background or environment. What matters is nurturing the talent within each individual with love. His words carried the weight of 40 years as a public school educator. However, at that moment, Peggy's expression suddenly changed. Know your place. The sudden shout froze the room. Peggy rushed to Grace's bassinet, snatched up the baby, and ran toward the third-floor balcony. Poor people have no right to raise children. Her cry carried the intensity of long-suppressed emotions suddenly erupting. Liz desperately chased after Peggy. As she ran up the stairs, she heard Emily's piano begin again, this time, the raindrop prelude. The notes resonated heavily, as if prophesying the urgent situation. When Liz reached the third-floor balcony, Peggy was already standing near the railing with Grace. The summer wind blew stronger than usual. Peggy, please. Give me back my baby. Liz's voice trembled. Behind her, she could hear party guests holding their breath. None of you understand. Peggy's voice rang with unprecedented intensity. Superficial refinement, surface manners, you think that's true dignity. In that instant, Grace slipped from Peggy's hands. Liz's scream echoed through the mansion. But then, something unexpected happened. Grace's tiny body caught on the branches of the old oak tree, cushioning her fall. The tree they had nearly cut down had saved the baby's life. Grace! As Liz ran down the stairs screaming, loud crashes began from above. Peggy had started throwing expensive vases and furnishings from the balcony. I must protect this house's dignity. Everything that sullies it must be removed. The sound of antique vases shattering. Crystal ornaments splintering. Each crash seemed to echo the sound of masks falling away. Mother, stop. Michael's voice rang out as he returned from work. But Peggy wouldn't listen. It's my responsibility to protect this house. None of you understand how much I... Mid-sentence, the railing Peggy leaned against suddenly creaked. Years of weather had corroded its interior. Watch out! Mary's scream echoed. But the warning came too late. The railing collapsed, and Peggy fell onto the second-floor balcony. At that moment, Emily's piano suddenly stopped. Silence enveloped the entire mansion. The sound of approaching ambulance sirens grew closer. Firefighters arrived to rescue Grace from the oak tree. Another ambulance attended to the unconscious Peggy. Liz. Just before being loaded onto the stretcher, Peggy opened her eyes briefly. They held a vulnerability never seen before. I was poor too. Those were her last words before being taken to the hospital. In the mansion's backyard lay scattered fragments of expensive furnishings. Only the oak tree stood quietly. Miraculously rescued, Grace showed no signs of distress, maintaining a peaceful expression. Mary silently handed Liz an old photograph. It showed a young Peggy, smiling in a cheap dress in front of a small apartment. Behind her stood Peggy's now-deceased mother in modest attire. She was a piano teacher. Mary said quietly. Madam's mother worked in a factory while paying for her daughter's piano lessons. Downstairs, Emily began playing piano again. This time, Chopin's Farewell Waltz. The melancholic melody quietly resonated through the broken pieces. In her private room at Massachusetts General Hospital, Peggy slowly opened her eyes. Through the window, she could see the sunset over the Charles River. Among the elaborate flower arrangements in the room stood a single daisy in a simple vase. The small white flower held a strange presence among the luxurious blooms. You remembered mother's favorite flower. Peggy turned a surprised face toward Liz, who smiled at her bedside. Gone was her former imperious manner, replaced by the expression of a fragile elderly woman. How did you know? Mary told me. About how your mother would pick daisies on her way home from the factory and always place them by your pillow. They were your most treasured possession. Tears welled in Peggy's eyes. Memories sealed away for more than 40 years suddenly flooded back. Her body trembled slightly in the white hospital bed. My mother worked in a South Boston textile factory while paying for my piano lessons. Peggy's voice carried a softness never heard before, almost like that of a young girl. Sometimes she'd skip meals to pay for lessons. She'd say, "Peggy, I never want you to live the life I've had." The reminiscence continued. Even on cold winter days, she'd buy sheet music instead of gloves for herself. With freezing fingers, she'd say, "My dreams will come true through you." In the corner of the room, Emily practiced on an electronic piano with headphones. Peggy didn't yet know about the scout from Juilliard School of Music. The girl's graceful fingers dancing across the keys mirrored young Peggy's mother perfectly. Mother was actually a brilliant pianist. I only learned in her final years that she'd been invited to the Vienna Conservatory. But poverty forced her to give up that dream. That's why Her words trailed off. Covering her face with both hands, Peggy choked back tears. You tried too hard for perfection. Liz spoke softly. In the twilight of the hospital room, her words resonated with deep understanding. But Peggy, true perfection isn't like that. We can support each other precisely because we're all imperfect. At that moment, Emily began to play Chopin's Fantaisie Impromptu, the piece Peggy's mother had always wanted to complete. The delicate melody permeated the hospital room, seeming to awaken something deep within the hearts of 3 generations of women. Emily. Peggy's voice trembled. She plays like my mother. Not with technique, but with her heart. It's as if mother's soul lives on in Emily. Michael entered the hospital room, carrying an old wooden box. Peggy's eyes fixed on it. "Mom, we found this in the attic." Mary had been keeping it safe. Inside were yellowed sheet music, records, and photographs of Peggy's young mother. She smiled proudly before a modest wooden piano. Despite her worn dress, her expression radiated dignity. Her profile was identical to Emily's. "I was wrong." Peggy's voice echoed in the twilight hospital room. "I chased after superficial dignity so much that I lost sight of what truly matters. The real beauty, the richness of heart that mother taught me. I'd forgotten it all." Grace approached Peggy's bed. In Liz's arms, the baby reached out to her grandmother with a bright smile for the first time. The innocent gesture brought fresh tears to Peggy's eyes. "Would you like to hold her?" At Liz's words, Peggy hesitantly extended trembling arms. The warmth of this tiny life began to slowly but surely thaw her heart, long frozen by pretense and prejudice. "Liz, I'm sorry." Her first words of apology. They rang like the final falling away of years of masks. "You were the one with true dignity all along. Not my superficial refinement." Outside the window, night was falling over Boston. The sunset reflecting on the Charles River glowed quietly, as if anticipating the dawn of a new day. Like old values melting away, the river's surface was stained with sunset colors. Emily's playing continued. Her music now surely connected the hearts of 3 generations of women in this small hospital room. And those notes resonated gently yet powerfully, like an overture to their family's new story. 3 months later, on Christmas Eve, the Collins mansion was bathed in peaceful light. The oak tree in the backyard glowed with small lights that Emily and Liz had chosen together, decorating the branches that had saved Grace. In the living room, Sarah and Peggy worked together preparing dinner. Though confined to a wheelchair, Peggy's expression had softened. From the kitchen wafted the aromas of traditional New England clam chowder and Kentucky fried chicken. "Sarah, this fried chicken recipe is truly wonderful," Peggy exclaimed with genuine admiration. "Would you share your secret spice blend with me?" Sarah smiled and answered, "Of course, Peggy. But the most important ingredient is love. And you have plenty of that." Emily's piano music softly filled the room. For tonight, she had specially chosen Debussy's Clair de Lune. The gentle melody melted into the Christmas night. "That child will do fine at next month's Juilliard audition," Peggy murmured, listening to her granddaughters playing. "My mother's dream will truly come true through Emily." By the living room fireplace, Tom read a picture book to young Grace. Around them, Michael finished decorating the Christmas tree. At its top shone an old angel ornament that Sarah had carefully preserved. "Everyone, dinner is ready," Mary announced cheerfully. She was now treated not just as a housekeeper, but as a family member. The table displayed dishes honoring both families' traditions. Peggy's preferred formal dinnerware harmonized beautifully with Sarah's handmade tablecloth. "May I say a few words?" Peggy raised herself slightly in her wheelchair. "In these 3 months, I've learned the most important lesson of my life. True dignity isn't found in gleaming silverware or expensive furnishings. It's... At that moment, Grace spoke her first word. "Love you." The room fell silent. The baby's innocent words seemed to have been saved especially for this day. Liz embraced her baby with tears in her eyes. "That's right, Grace. We all love each other." Emily's piano moved to a Chopin nocturne. The notes rang out crystal clear, as if announcing the beginning of the family's new story. Outside the window, snow began falling quietly over Boston. The snow accumulating on the oak tree's branches gleamed pure white, like the family's hearts released from their former burdens. "Liz," Peggy called quietly. "Thank you. You taught me. True family bonds mean accepting and supporting each other's differences." Michael raised his glass. "Let's toast to the beginning of our new family traditions." The sound of crystal glasses touching rang throughout the room. The sound carried a pure resonance, like the final melting away of years of barriers. Emily finished playing and joined the family circle. Her expression showed unprecedented peace. Through music, and through her family's unconditional love, the autistic girl had found her true place. As the fireplace flames flickered quietly, Liz made a silent vow. This was true happiness. Family bonds weren't about seeking perfection, but about accepting and supporting each other's imperfections. Standing by the window, she could see lights twinkling across the Charles River, hinting at the new year to come. And that old oak tree still stood tall, watching over them as always. The snow continued to fall gently, wrapping the Boston streets in white, as if blessing the beginning of their new story.